So I think that it's pretty clear to say, at least nowadays, that the UFC is headed towards a direction that people just don't like. And I understand it completely. I mean, there's people out there right now that are saying that Magomed Ankalaev pretty much beat Alex Pereira because of the control time. And I will be one of the people that actually come out to say publicly that, yeah, I do pretty much agree with that sentiment. I do honestly believe that Magomed Ankalaev holding Alex Pereira in, I think, was it round three and I think round five, were literally the determining factors on whether or not he was going to win the title, and he did. Like I said in a tweet that I put out yesterday, if you guys think that Magomed Ankalaev deserved to win the fight because he had the most control time, I understand. But also, I do understand the people that are saying that Alex Pereira won the fight because he did output the most damage, which is a pretty reasonable argument within itself. I personally think that the most exciting fighter, the fighter that definitely is going to sell, the fighter that's going to do the most for the UFC in terms of growth, lost last night. And that's pretty unfortunate. It's pretty unfortunate that Alex Pereira lost last night, despite what everybody was expecting, including myself. I really did think that Alex Pereira was going to go ahead and get this done. Now, what the future lies beyond this moment is going to be a pretty interesting uh era for the UFC, because the UFC is going to be entering a new timeline in the fact that we got Magomed Ankalaev now as one of the champions, uh a cage hugger, without a doubt a cage hugger, and that seems to not be a base that a lot of people in the MMA world seem to enjoy watching. We got to see Bilal Muhammad do that, and he got absolutely torched for the remainder of that weekend, right? I think it was Sunday and Monday of the following day, whenever he did beat Leon Edwards and became champion. He was getting absolutely torched by literally everybody on the internet because he was just hugging, his opponent. And it's not the first time that we've seen, fighters hug their way into a victory. And it just sucks. It literally just sucks. It's not enjoyable to watch. It's not something that it creates excitement, especially for the fans. Does it win fights? Yes, it does. Should it win fights? In my own opinion, no, it really shouldn't. I think that if your opponent is outputting the most damage, and you're just controlling your opponent, I don't think that you should get that many points. I think that the UFC should definitely do something in order to combat this very frustrating thing that we are seeing now, that's more prevalent than ever in the UFC, and that's fighters stalling. Like, I think other organizations out there like ONE FC, they have like red cards and yellow cards and shit about fighters like not wanting to engage, or fighters, just stalling positions. I feel like the same thing or something to that degree should be done in the UFC. Now, granted, I think that this rule change would drastically change the meta that is right now in the UFC, that seems to be a lot more wrestling dominant and grappling dominant, because those kind of bases seems to have the most success right now, and it kind of seems like that's the shift that we're seeing right now in the UFC, and not too many people are happy with that type of fighting style, because yes, I will agree that it's not the most entertaining thing if you don't understand grappling. If you understand grappling and wrestling to a high degree, or even to a moderate or beginner degree, obviously you're gonna find some of those exchanges, pretty enjoyable and pretty entertaining to watch. For the average fan, I'm talking about the guys that go out to the bar and drink and sit down and watch the fight, which are literally 90% of the fans that are watching the UFC, is not the most exciting thing. And if the UFC wants to keep growing, I think that they need to have an implementation of a new rule. I think that Mark Goddard, or I don't even know who was a freaking referee last night. I'm pretty sure it was Mark Goddard though. He pretty much got Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira to stand in front of each other in the 50-50 after Magomed Ankalaev literally held Alex Pereira on the fence for like 2 minutes. 2 minutes in a round, that's like what, 40% of the entire round? That literally should not be happening. If you are holding your opponent for 2 minutes, 40% of a round, that's stalling, in my opinion. I think at that point the referee should pretty much come like literally to the fighters and be like, okay, let's start again at the middle. And I think that should be done a lot quicker. It shouldn't take 2 minutes for the referee to come in and be like, okay, guys, let's go ahead and restart this entire thing. In my honest opinion, I think that it should be somewhere between 30 to 45 seconds. Like if you are pretty much winning 30 to 45 seconds of a round, right? I think that that should be, obviously noted. Like, okay, like you were able to control your opponent for 30 to 45 seconds, but we need to see more. We need to see what else, is in this potential scenario that could go down within a round. And I just don't think that just holding and pretty much grounded your opponent without advancing or looking to advance position, should be weighted that much heavily. Now, here's another interesting statistic that I want to talk about. Magomed Ankalaev landed 20% of his strikes off the clinch. Now, I mentioned this in the video that I uploaded earlier today, that if you guys ever been to an MMA class and you guys have ever been held on the fence, you know that these little shots that you're receiving don't do the most damage. They just don't do the most damage. What those shots are made for you to do is they're more they're more towards the idea that they're only there to pester you. They're trying to make you to make a mistake. They're not really there to do significant damage. Most of the significant damage that you're going to receive in a sparring match, MMA fight, you know, is literally like through strikes, head kicks, crosses, hooks. Those are really, really powerful punches, that literally do more damage than like the little baby punches you receive whenever you're literally on the fence. So I do think that there needs to be an implementation of a different rule set at this point, right? Because obviously the UFC is shifting through a different meta right now than what we saw a couple years prior to this. And obviously the main guy that made this popular was Khabib Nurmagomedov. But I think it's time that the UFC starts implementing some sort of rule change, so we start seeing less and less of issues like this with fighters just trying to stall the end of a freaking round. Now, if we don't, we are going to be seeing more ultimate fence cuddling, and that's just not something that really catches my attention. If we start seeing more and more, fighters at the top of the game exploiting this rule set that the UFC just seems to not want to, punish fighters for doing, is definitely gonna draw is just gonna lower the the fandom, if I'm just being honest, because people just aren't gonna want to watch. If people are aware that the top five best guys are exploiting the fact that you could cuddle your opponent into a victory, expect to see that more in high level matchups. And honestly, that fucking sucks. Nobody wants to see that. And it's honestly just a waste of time. And hopefully the UFC does come together and they do something for this, because this has to stop, in my honest opinion. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you guys think the UFC should implement a different rule change? Like I said, personally, I would like to see, if you are controlling your opponent for 30 seconds, 45 seconds within a round, and you're not looking to advance a position, you should definitely be fucking not punished, but the fight should be started again in the 50-50 in the middle of the octagon. That's just something that I think is pretty damn good, because a minute into a 5-minute round is like 20%. Like nobody wants to see 20% of a fucking round be done on the edge of a cage, literally cuddling your opponent to win a round. Like, no, that's fucking gay. Nobody wants to see that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. As always, it's a pleasure. Peace out and have a good one.